Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we continue our discussion on Sanguinius, with his opinion of each and every brother Primarch. A general spoiler warning to begin here, as we will be referencing events from across the Warhammer 40k universe, and in particular the Horus Heresy series. So you have been warned. Now we're going through the Primarchs in Legion order. And so in part 1 we covered the Primarchs from the first, Lionel Johnson, through to the 10th, Ferrus Manus. So if you missed part 1, make sure to give that a listen as well. However, without further ado, let's jump straight in with the next Primarch, Angron. The clash of themes between Angron and Sanguinius are obviously pretty clear. However, before the big face-off within the Siege of Terror, there was actually precious little in the way of interaction between the two, or even simply references regarding Angron from Sanguinius's point of view. We know Angron hated being called the Red Angel, due to the similarity with Sanguinius, but we don't really know why. It could have been out of a disdain for his much beloved brother, or equally, it could have simply been because he didn't want to be compared to him, that on some inner level, he never felt worthy of it. And though it's not from a Horus Heresy series novel, there is a reference from the Forge-World Horus Heresy book 8 that Sanguinius's warm nature calmed even Angron. Among them all, Sanguinius was perhaps the most admired and respected, for he held none of his brothers lesser than himself, and met each with an open warmth and goodwill that calmed even the rage of his grim brother Angron. However, again, that's not a quote from the Heresy series, and it's a bit of a vague statement at best. More a general statement on Sanguinius's nature than anything really in regards to their particular relationship. The main lore connection between the two is obviously the Siege of Terror, Sanguinius's big moment of glory before the tragic end. But unfortunately, this encounter is entirely told from Angron's point of view, so even here, we don't actually get anything in regards to Sanguinius's faults. No regrets, or possible anger. So we're really left to a lot of speculation here. Primarch opinions on Angron usually fall in one of two ways. The first being pity for what's become of him, butchered by the nails within his brain, no pun intended. Or 2, disdain, for not even appearing to try to better himself, for the self-indulged pity that he displays, like a pouting child. And for me, while I have no doubts Sanguinius would not agree or appreciate Angron's massacres, the extremes he led his legion to, I have to imagine he would lean more on the pity side than disdain. Looking down on someone isn't generally Sanguinius's style. He's far more the helpful kind of person. And so I've got to believe he'd look more sympathetically upon Angron than anything else. And though it's not much, he does salute Angron and call him brother during the Siege of Terror, when Angron is demanding a duel. If Sanguinius truly had nothing but disdain for Angron, I don't think he'd be wasting time saluting him. But moving on, next we have Roboute Guilliman. Now, Sanguinius and Roboute spent a fair amount of time together during the Imperium Secundus storyline, and so I think it's safe to say Sanguinius liked and respected his brother. He embraced Guilliman warmly upon his arrival to Ultramar, and he allowed himself to be talked in to Guilliman's Imperium Secundus plan, becoming its emperor no less, despite his own misgivings. So it shows a tremendous trust and regard for Guilliman's opinion. And though their time during the Imperium Secundus is tense, there are clear moments between Sanguinius and Guilliman where you can see the signs of a good past in history between the two. Signs from the way they interact, of a good friendship as brothers, in particular during the novel Pharos. Guilliman smiled, the expression sorrowful, tinged with regret. "I did not mean to force it upon you, my brother." "Ah, but you did. Or circumstances did. If you truly feel that way, I owe you my apologies," said Guilliman. "I respect that very much. It is hard for one such as you to apologise, I know. Your plans are everything. If you must apologise, then your plans were insufficient." "I do not like to be wrong," said Guilliman, and there was such chill sincerity to the words that Sanguinius was moved to touch his brother's arm in sympathy. "Do not fret, Roboute. I took up your offer reluctantly, but willingly." So it's pretty clear the two had a solid friendship, and Sanguinius held Roboute in high regard. Moving on, next we have Mortarion. Now, this could have been one of those relationships where we always had to wonder. However, then came Mortarion's Primarch series novel, The Pale King, where Sanguinius and Horus Lupercal were sent to hear Mortarion's version of events after a particularly brutal compliance by the Death Guard. And Sanguinius's first reaction upon viewing the devastation definitely reveals a condemning view of Mortarion, giving you the sense that Sanguinius isn't completely surprised by it. "What has he done?" said Sanguinius. "This is what we are here to learn," Horus answered. "We can already see that this was a massacre." "It has that appearance, granted." Horus tried to sound a note of caution. "Don't forget the reasons why Mortarion was sent here. The struggle for compliance of the Galaspar cluster could have been much longer, and much costlier." "I don't see how it could have been costlier for Galaspar," said Sanguinius. "Precisely," said Horus. "We don't see yet. We cannot prejudge without all the information, and we have only just arrived. Arrived to see mountains of corpses." "I know," said Horus. He grimaced and placed a hand on the angel's shoulder. "Our judgment must not be rushed though. I understand the temptation. Believe me, I feel it too. That, I am convinced, is why our father sent us to meet with Mortarion. We can check each other's first impulses without causing offence." "You think we can check Mortarion's too?" Those repeated references to the devastation, Mortarion's actions, then the final comment of being able to check Mortarion's reaction, it definitely reveals a bit of a scornful opinion, not a hatred by any stretch of the imagination. This is the angel after all, but certainly a bit condemning, disapproving. And Mortarion is one of the few Primarchs who doesn't particularly like Sanguinius either, being happy to see Horus, but his opinion on seeing Sanguinius markedly different. Mortarion looked past Horus, up the slope of the rubble to where the angel waited. Mortarion was less pleased to see him. Sanguinius was so consumed by the illusion of nobility that Mortarion felt the angel was perpetually looking down from on high as he circled an unreachable ideal. Why had their father instructed the angel to come to Galaspar? And Sanguinius clearly takes no enjoyment throughout this judgment, if you will, making a point of telling Mortarion so. So it's clear he didn't want Mortarion to think he disliked him. And that's because he didn't. I have no doubt Sanguinius cared about Mortarion as he did all of his brothers. Indeed, we saw him having a teasing joke with Fulgrim at Mortarion's expense within the novel Scars. So there was some form of brotherly bond there. However, the Angel definitely wasn't approving of Mortarion's methods, and as a result, did not have a particularly close bond or relationship with the Death Lord. Now, moving on, our next Primarch is Magnus the Red. Now, Magnus and Sanguinius appear to have a very good relationship, for it was Sanguinius and Jagatai Khan who were Magnus's biggest allies in support for the Librarius within the legions. And when Magnus was summoned to Nicaea, within the novel A Thousand Suns, it was the Angel, alongside Fulgrim, who greeted the Primarch warmly. Next, Magnus turned to Sanguinius, and the Primarch of the Blood Angels kissed his brother's cheeks, his greeting heartfelt but reserved. Indeed, Sanguinius was one of the Primarchs sent to greet Magnus here, because of their good relationship. And again, the two met along with Jagatai many times prior to Nicaea, and one such meeting within Jagatai Khan's Primarch novel, Warhawk of Chagoris, shows us Sanguinius and Magnus getting along, close enough to be able to be honest with each other, without fear of offence. "You worry too much," he said. The Khan shot him an amused glance. "So you keep saying, because it is the truth. You hobble yourselves, not as greatly as our deluded brothers from Barbarous and Olympia, but you are hobbled all the same." The Angel looked up from contemplation. "Who will fight alongside you then, Magnus?" he asked. The Crimson King laughed. "So you've heard of that?" "And I," said the Khan. "The Lunar Wolves won't do it anymore." "They said that to you?" "More than once." Magnus sighed. "There are rumours about all of us. They say your people venerate the severed heads of your enemies. They say Barlights drink the blood of the fallen. Does it really matter what they say?" "So much like our father," smiled Sanguinius, shaking his head a little. "You talk, but you don't listen. No wonder he favours you." Magnus laughed. "Come now, I was told this would be a conference for the betterment of all, not a trial for the Thousand Suns. All I've heard thus far is warnings, and I can get those from plenty of mouths. It's a simple, honest conversation between brothers, who quite simply get along, and that sums up their relationship. Sanguinius liked Magnus, feared where his arrogance might lead him, as most his brothers did, and was pained by his eventual fall. Now, moving on, we have Horus Lupercal. Well, this one's an easy one. Horus was, from the very beginning, Sanguinius's most beloved brother. We have had by far and away the most scenes of any two Primarchs in the lore between these two, building up to the tragedy of their eventual final encounter. They were the best of friends, and the closest of brothers. In Fear to Tread, we see them joke and laugh with each other. Horus nodded, as if the answer were obvious. "I am a man of my word. I would have let them leave the planet's surface, make for orbit." He cocked his head. "But when they met your ships up there, well..." He gave a small shrug, the huge shoulders of his battleplate exaggerating the motion. You've never been as agreeable as I." The smile became a moment of laughter. Sanguinius gave a slight, mocking bow. "So true. I must content myself with merely being the better warrior." "Don't make me pluck those wings," Horus retorted. "Perish the faults," said Sanguinius. "Without them, I'd only be as handsome as you are." "That would be tragic," Horus agreed. And we then saw how Sanguinius was there to support his brother after his announcement as War Master. "I never asked for this, but I won't be sorry for it. Nor should you." Sanguinius went back to the goblet and took it up again. "Brother, the mantle of War Master is yours, and is right to be so." He grinned. "I am proud and pleased beyond my ability to express." "You are," said Horus, as if it was suddenly a certainty for him. "And Lorgar and Fulgrim," his brother continued. "Did you not hear them cheer with me when Father said the words, when he named you Supreme Commander? The others were an echo behind, but they feel the same. I'm sure if Rogel were not so stiff, he would have done so as well." Dawn did shake my hand. From the Imperial Fist, that's practically an outburst of joy. The angel's smile spread to his sibling, and Horus gave a shallow nod. And we have seen over and over just how much Horus's betrayal would break Sanguinius's heart. Horus was the one Primarch who saw the angel's flaw firsthand, who Sanguinius trusted in telling, asking him to keep it secret even from their father, which Horus did. That's about as true a testament of trust and friendship from a Primarch that you can get. Quite simply, the angel's sacrifice is so tragic because of the friendship that existed between the two, the loss of the Brotherhood. Now moving on to Lorgar. There isn't much to go by when it comes to Sanguinius's opinion of his brother here. On the one hand, you could imagine them getting along fairly well, both imperiously loyal to the Emperor in the beginning. But on the other hand, you could envisage Lorgar's worship of the Emperor being something that got between them a little, especially thanks to the angel's wings, the symbol he was. I don't know about you, but I could easily see Lorgar's extremism transferring from the Emperor to the Angel, and Sanguinius not being too happy about it. But admittedly, that's mainly just me thinking. There isn't any mention of this within the lore. There is one particular moment, however, that does give me pause. Makes me wonder that perhaps their relationship wasn't as good as it could have been. And that's the moment we just discussed, when Horus discovers Sanguinius killing one of his own sons, lost to the first in Fear to Tread. Sanguinius making a particular quote regarding Lorgar. "I could not speak of this to any of the others. You know as well as I do that it would diminish my legion. Some of our brothers would see it as a weakness and seek to turn this truth against me," he grimaced. "Alpharius, Lorgar, they would not be generous." So naming Alpharius and Lorgar in particular definitely reveals a lack of trust in them to me. So I don't think we can say Sanguinius and Lorgar had the best of relationships. We've never seen anything in particular saying they didn't. However, this comment, at this time, is very telling. And it reveals Sanguinius absolutely did not trust Lorgar as implicitly as he did others amongst the Primarchs. Next we have Vulkan. Considering the renowned warmth of these two Primarchs, you would assume they had a good solid friendship. And indeed, Sanguinius appears to be genuinely sad when viewing Vulkan's slain body in the novel The Unremembered Empire. As you'd expect. "It is a sorry sight," whispered Sanguinius, "to be held in a casket here, in the cold cellars of your fortress." And later, when Malkador reveals Vulkan lives to the trio of Sanguinius, Jagatai and Rogal upon the throne world, Sanguinius is obviously happily shocked and surprised, even making a comment of, "Why can't I sense him?" that he should be able to feel his brother's presence. Sure, a reference to his psychic ability, but perhaps it could reveal a personal connection too. That Sanguinius is used to the presence of Vulkan. No, it's really not much, and you could just as easily take it for evidence that there wasn't much of a relationship or fondness between the two. But I think it's enough to show they, at the very least, got along, and the angel was indeed fond of the Lord of Drakes. Next we have the Raven Lord, Corax. Now I cannot think of a single reference on Corax from Sanguinius's point of view, but again, like before, sometimes not having anything can tell you something. There was clearly no big disagreement between the two, and they were both fiercely loyal to their father. So you would expect the two to have gotten along pretty well. They were quite different in their personalities, the very sombre, grounded Raven Lord, compared to the ornate, noble angel, so maybe they could perhaps have found little ground between them. However, we have seen Corax getting along particularly well with Guilliman, for example, who too is quite different to the Raven Lord, so it doesn't rule out a good friendship. However, seeing as we have nothing to go by, I'd say the Angel and the Raven Lord got along well, respected each other's abilities, but not much more than that. Perhaps were just not the closest of brothers, never able to spend a great deal of time with each other. Hopefully we'll get to see some great Crusade era stories and interactions between the two that could change that. I know I'd definitely like to see the two meeting and coming face to face. However, that leads us to our final Primarch, Alpharius. Now Alpharius is another Primarch we have very little to go by. But as I said earlier with Lorgar, Alpharius' name did come up in that comment regarding Sanguinius not wanting them to know of his legion's secrets, and so it appears Sanguinius most likely had a level of distrust for Alpharius, given his nature, and that maybe makes sense. Sanguinius a very open soul, and Alpharius one eternally hidden, enshrouded, harbouring his secrets. I could easily see Sanguinius not particularly liking that manner, again, when he is so open himself. So, while we don't know much, and you'd assume they got along okay, we do have to say there was a lack of trust from the Angel's part. And yeah, that is a little ironic considering Sanguinius was talking about a secret himself. However, that's it. Sanguinius' opinion, as far as I can make out, for each and every one of his brother Primarchs. As always everyone, what do you think? Are there any surprises for you here? Or are there any you'd love to see more of? Relationships we need to explore? As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to check out part 1 if you haven't already. A huge thank you to all my subscribers for your support. It truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you enjoyed the video, please consider dropping a like and subscribe to help the channel grow. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.